Great. Abhi, great. Hello,
Yes.
everyone. Welcome to the Cambridge Decolonizing Network seminar. I would first start by briefly introducing what Cambridge DCN is, uh, and then I would introduce the speaker, and then we will start our talk. Uh, After the talk, if you have any questions, you can leave it in the chat box or the Q&A part of your of Teams, and then your questions will be asked during the by the moderators after the talk. So the Cambridge Decolonizing Criminology Network was established in January 2020 with the aim of bringing together students, researchers, and esteemed scholars in criminology and related fields to engage with decolonial thoughts and perspectives. Our primary focus is to center colonial structures of power in contemporary criminological debates and encourage more subaltern, indigenous, peripheral, and scholarly voices from the non-West or global South. CDCN, which is Cambridge Decolonizing Criminology Network, was started by our matriarch, Kanupriya, who is also in the meeting. As we call it, is an intellectual endeavor to challenge the dominance of Western perspectives in criminology. Our goal is to unseat the Western nation state as the singular point of departure for comparative criminological research by actively engaging with post-colonial and post-disciplinary perspectives, theoretical frameworks, and methodologies. Since our inception, the network has grown significantly, reaching and sparking interest among students, researchers, and academics in the UK and around the world. We have been regularly organizing online seminars and reading groups, and one of our reading groups is actually coming up. So if you're interested, you should please sign up. Um, and we have been actively involved in discussions around equality, diversity, and inclusion at the Institute of Criminology. Through this network, we aim to inspire scholars to think critically and about decolonial matters when researching and writing about criminological issues. Now, that was about the DCN. And if you want to know more about the DCN, you can always write to us, and we're happy to chat about it. Today's seminar, we are very, very grateful and blessed to have Ahmed Abozaid. I hope my pronunciation was right. And Ahmed is an Egyptian political scientist currently based in the UK. He's a Leverhulme Early Career Research Fellow at the Department of Sociology, University of Cambridge. During this fellowship, he will be working on an interdisciplinary project that examines the genealogy of state violence in the Middle East and North African region. Be between 2022 uh, to 2024, Ahmed held the position of Lecturer of International Security and International Relations at the Department of Politics and International Relations at University of Southampton. Additionally, he was a fellow at Columbia University's program on exiting violence from 2021 to 2022. Ahmed obtained his PhD in international relations and comparative political theory from the University of St. Andrews in UK. Ahmed has an outstanding publications record with 2 books in English, 9 books in Arabic, and over 70 peer-reviewed papers in both Arabic and English. His most recent book, titled Infinite Debate, Theories of International Relations and the Study of War and Peace, is set to be published in 2 volumes by Qatar University Press. His dedication to scholarship focused on the MENA region, which is, I'm assuming, Middle East, North African region, has been recognized by the Arab Citation and Impact Factor. Since 2012, Ahmed had consistently been ranked among the top 3 most cited and influential Arab scholars in politics and international relations uh, out of 3,000 researchers from over 22 countries. So thank you, Ahmed, for joining us today and sharing your exciting, thought-provoking research on state violence with us at the DCN network. Before we start, I would like to again remind everyone about the rules. I mean, not rules, but sort of like housekeeping that we usually maintain during the seminar. So the housekeeping sort of norms are that Ahmed will give his talk. And after the talk, if you have any questions for him, please feel free to type them in the Q&A box, which is at the top of your screen right next to the chat box. The presentation will typically run for 40 to 45 minutes, after which we'll have time for questions. The presentation will typically run for 40 to 45 minutes is also a housekeeping norm for Ahmed, so that he would also have more time to take questions, which I know that the audience would have plenty of questions to ask. We will do our best to wrap up the seminar within 1 hour, but again, emphasis on do our best. However, if the discussion continues due to your enthusiasm or the kind of questions that we have, please feel free to leave at any time. So I think I'm done with the introduction, and Ahmed, you can start now.
Thank you so much, Karen. I think it's a good evening now. Good evening, everyone. If you from in UK, and good morning, good evening for anyone watching us from all over the world or will watch us later on. Uh, Thank you so much again, Cambodia, and thank you so much, Karen, and for the DCN for the generous invitation. I really appreciate it. It was a very short time, and it just came at the right time for me because I'm working on this project since October last year, or even actually before that, but it was accelerated by the ongoing genocide in Palestine. So I think, and since the network it's about decolonizing criminology, I thought that maybe it will be a good opportunity to share some of these thoughts and looking for a conversation and a dialogue more than it just come here and talk about my research and share it with people. I'm looking for more engaging and more dialogical activities with scholar and with students, especially coming from different background like myself, or coming from political science, international relation, now international political sociology slash criminology and critical security study. So I'm looking forward to hear from you about the conversation today or about the topic today. And if I may, I will start sharing my screen, and I will do my best to not to talk more than 25 30 minutes, because it's too much, to be honest, to speak more than 20 minutes for everyone. So I'm trying my best today to do that. Without further ado, so today I'm talking about a new project as a part of my fellowship here at Cambridge about the genealogies of state violence in international orders. And as you can see from the title, it's echo with the Charles Tilly famous idiom, "State make war, war make state." And actually, I disagree in my book. I disagree, or I engage with Charles Tilly and claiming that it was domestic violence more than interstate wars that play a constitutive role in the process of state building and legitimacy formation. So today, and I'm talking about the case of Israel. So I'm starting by claiming that in the light of the ongoing atrocities in places like Palestine, Ukraine, Syria, Sudan, and many other places, as you can tell, that witness live streaming genocide or Empire 2.0, like what happened with the fallen invasion in Ukraine since 2022. These events raise the question about the role of violence in international politics, and the question about how can we understand or better understand the global challenges caused by this form of violence, which is the state violence, and its effects on the future world order has never been as urgent, both epistemically and morally, like it's today. And to achieve more comprehensive understanding of this timely phenomenon, I claim that we must question the current configuration of international community and the motivations that drives state to rely more excessively on violence and force rather than engaging in a dialogue or civic conversation with those who challenge their authority. Specifically, I explore how the state relies on excessive violence and oppression toward its citizen, as well as articulation and positioning and legalization of such practices within a society serve to establish and consolidate and preserve political authority. So, as a political scientist and criminology, I think that the world must seek experts on state violence and state building, and particularly from the global south, since today we are talking from a decolonizing and decentering perspective. Especially also amidst or in the middle of the visible incompetence and deficiencies of the Western and Eurocentric theory that involve and entangle in their own postmodern world problem. I am presenting an epistemological alternative to decenter and decolonizing political sociology and criminology of the state and the role of violence of international relations. The example I'm presenting today is Abdurrahman ibn Khaldun. Abdurrahman ibn Khaldun is an Arab Muslim scholar from the 14th century and widely accepted now to be considered the founder of the modern sociology, or what we know today as sociology or historical sociology. And I claim that there is no better alternative or a master than Ibn Khaldun to reflect on the constitutive role of violence and terror in state building and power consolidation. Moreover, I explain why Ibn Khaldun offer an conventional methodological approach to addressing such transformative pathway to international order. As a pioneer of a state thinker, I present what Edward Said called a traveling reading of Ibn Khaldun, who I claim represents a kind of experts that do not exclusively rely on Eurocentric Westphalian or social contract model of state building and power analysis, but also recognize the fundamental rules of tribes, Asabiyya, religion, and myth making. And I will elaborate more about this. Sorry if. Uh, So today, that's what I'm talking about the what I call it Ibn Khaldun theory of constitutive function of violence and state building, and what exactly is the contribution Ibn Khaldun can add it to our understanding of that theory, and how we can escape from the medieval Islamic Orientalism trap that trying to inbox Ibn Khaldun as someone from medieval and from the Islamic world and has no global reach or universal applications. So I will start with the argument. So the purpose of this discussion is to illuminate to the extent to which the use and reliance of violence, or what I call it al-qahr wal-ghalabatu wal-shawka, and this is Ibn Khaldun terms, which refer to repression, brute force, and violence by the dominant group or the Asabiyya, side by side with the role of ideology or religion, or what he called ad-da'wa al-diniyya. Also, all this Arabic term and terminology I will elaborate later as well, contributed to the establishment of a state as well as the consolidation of power. Likewise, the discussion explored how state violence was the main, if not the only tool that used to impose either the mode of production, the ethical, legal, and bureaucratic embodiment, or even the form and the constitutive foundation of the state itself. This is like triangle theory or triangle component of Ibn Khaldun theory. Accordingly, an accurate understanding of state policies and behavior require a better examination of the way that state or authority treated its own citizen, in this case, the Palestinian, including a large segment of its citizen. I argue that since the social and political configuration of authority discussed by Ibn Khaldun remain present and effective in today's world order, whether in the same form of life or in a different form of life, the best way to approach this question is not through addressing the bureaucratic structure or the mode of production, as most of the modern or contemporary political science and sociologists do, but to introduce Ibn Khaldun here by deconstructing the material and the discursive structure of repression and state violence in world order. So how exactly a guy from the 14th century will add something that expand our understanding in the time of AI, 21st century smartphones, and such a complicated and a complex world order today? Uh, in my view, I claim that the potential benefits of revisiting Ibn Khaldun's thesis can be summed up into main dimension, theoretical dimension and practical dimension. From a theoretical perspective, especially or particularly political sociology, comparative politics, and criminology, Ibn Khaldun enhances our knowledge of the constitutive function of violence, including terror, in the process of building state and forming authority. As I mentioned before, that the dominant narrative about state making is Charles Tilly, who was talking about war as the main tool that created the state or formulated the state. So Tilly was not interested about the social conflict within the state rather than the form of conflict between two entities or more states with each other, but not within the state. And Ibn Khaldun's focus on the social struggle or the domination struggle among the state to understand how exactly the state was built or consolidate its power. Additionally, his work destabilized the Euro-modern foundation of the state building. Since we mentioned he was born in the 1300, that almost 250 years before Westphalia, which considers a cornerstone of our international order today. Moreover, the efforts to decolonize knowledge in political theory and sociology and criminology as well, both overwhelmingly Eurocentric fields, can be strengthened by treating a scholar like Ibn Khaldun as a political theorist and sociologist rather than a medieval philosopher or a historian. Furthermore, by comparing Ibn Khaldun's idea and notion with those of white Euro-modern male scholars such as Max Weber, Charles Tilly, Michel Foucault, and others, reveals the limitation of their concentration on Westphalian and 18th and 19th century Europe model of state building. From analytical standpoint, applying Ibn Khaldun or the proposed Ibn Khaldun model that I will elaborate later to other non-European cases could help us with the effort to decentralize the study of politics. You know, like if you read most of the Western scholarship, it's all about European cases, and in particular from the 17th century to the end of 19th century cases study, We only focus on Europe, and Europe is a model that exported all over the world to the universe. So there is only one universality, which is the Eurocentric model. On the other hand, someone like Ibn Khaldun, to give you a small snapshot about his life, he was born in Tunisia for a family from the so-called Andalus, or the Islamic Spain, in the 13th century. He worked as a prime minister, a diplomatic missionary to Spain. He served as a prime minister in the whole North Africa. He was a top jurist in Egypt. He involved deeply in the politics of Islamic Empire in the North Africa. And even he made the most powerful figure of his time, which was Timur-Land in 1400, which also gave him access to the Eastern philosophy and form of governance. So Ibn Khaldun almost have a global knowledge of the time of his age. We're talking about almost 100 years before the rise of Europe and the discovery of the so-called the New World. So Ibn Khaldun almost have all the knowledge of his time from Spain in the west to China in the east. So that, in my view, gave him that cross-regional or trans-regional perspective of what is politics of his time. So revisiting him will help us to come up with a new political imagination, a new sociological imagination about state building process. The analytical perspective suggested of Ibn Khaldun that applying that will elaborate later on to our understanding of the politics of state building. In his global history, Ibn Khaldun emphasized the importance of studying state violence in understanding how authority formation and state building process have shifted over time. In fact, he stressed in a law-like statement that in human history, state and authority were formed through violent practices and discourses. And that's the main argument of my work. Moreover, as I will reveal, how this process was not exclusively to the Muslim world, but it also extended to the Western, European, and non-Western hemisphere, as well as in the global South as well. In sum, to come up with Ibn Khaldun, re-examining and rereading Ibn Khaldun arguments will open up other potential horizon and alternative imaginary with which to comprehend the complexity of the world beyond the Eurocentric lens, and to understand the origins of modern nation state and the constant influence of traditional social configuration in modern world, which also, like the Eurocentric, immediately dismissed everything before the 19th century or non-European form of pre-19th century configuration and traditional practices and discourses. Yet these contributions, I claim, won't be noticeable until scholars began to develop, upgrade, and engage with Ibn Khaldun as other non-Western scholar works as well. So Ibn Khaldun wrote one main book, which is the history of Ibn Khaldun. It's 7 volumes, and about its world history or international history. And the first volume of his book called Al-Muqaddimah. Al-Muqaddimah in Arabic is the introduction. And the introduction considered one of the most important or seminal work of political sociology. And in this volume, he outlined his theory or his perspective how to read world history. From that book, I choose to focus on 3, 4 concepts he introduced. So to be clear, there is no such thing called the theory of Ibn Khaldun. There is no theory of Ibn Khaldun theory of state building. This is what I present. This is my interpretation. This is my traveling reading of Ibn Khaldun. So what exactly Ibn Khaldun was talking about? I argue that, sorry, that there are three interconnected socio-political parallels of what I call the Khaldunian theory of state building. These fundamental and constitutive variables are the Asabiyya, or the dominant group or the dominant social forces. And the second one is al-da'wa al-diniya, or religious colored call or ideology. And the third one is al-qahr wal-ghalabatu wal-shawka, or brute force and effective power and repression. Uh, Al-da'wa al-diniya is also can be interpreted as a symbolic violence. Al-qahr wal-ghalabatu wal-shawka also can be interpreted as the material or the physical force of violence. Ibn Khaldun clearly stated that Asabiyya, in order to establish its state, need to extend and consolidate its authority and dominance and monopolize political power through what I call al-shawka, or the effective power. Al-Shawka stands for a set of capabilities necessary for imposing hegemony and control over territories, followers, subjects, and followers of the Asabiyya, or the power the Asabiyya obtained. Accordingly, the essence of politics for Ibn Khaldun is conflict and struggle for hegemony and the use of violence. So it's not a civilian act, to use Hannah Arendt or Aristotle's presentation of what is politics. For Ibn Khaldun, it's more to put it to Western audience, it's more to Thomas Hobbes and Nicola Machiavelli perception of politics as a struggle over power and for dominance. In other words, in Al-Muqaddimah, Ibn Khaldun presents a three-dimensional theory of political and social power. The hard power, where the main peril of any authority constitutes its power and dominance via the excessive use of brute force and repression domestically and externally. Soft power, which refer to the use of ideology and discourse as we know it today. And the third one is smart power, is the capacity of an actor to combine elements of hard and soft power in a way that mutually reinforce in each other. So this is what I call it the theology of state building according to Ibn Khaldun, the Asabiyya and religious and repression. And if you put it today in today terms, it's the dominant social forces, ideology or discourse, and monopoly of use of force or power over civilian. To examine the complicated relationship between the Asabiyya authority and state terrorism and the process of nation building, and drawing on Ibn Khaldun proposition, I will outline how the Asabiyya formed, constituted, and consolidated its political power, mainly for hegemony and control over society, and fundamentally via the excessive use of force and coercion by the police and the army, as well as the systematic securitization of the religion's discourse. And we will focus on the state of Israel. So, shortly, this is like outlining the three elements of Ibn Khaldun's Asabiyya, or for example, someone like Tahir Khamiri, represented as national spirit, or Volksgeist in German, which refers to the kind of hyper-nationalist view other people use it as national spirit, or the global, group feeling or solidarity, or political class as well. The other one is a dawah, is myth making or a religious call that used to monopolize and recruiting of individuals and groups to support the political struggle over power and to legitimize the policies and the practices as the authority committed to or enforced over its subject, and gives him legitimacy and control over the society as well. So Ibn Khaldun focused not only in the material form of power, but also in the soft and the discursive form of power as well, to legitimize and to consolidate their power over their subject or their component. The third one is uh, repression or القهر والغلبة والشوكة, and this one is Ibn Khaldun use the term الغلبة, not violence in Arabic, to remove any moral judgment of the violence. So, for example, to put Ibn Khaldun in a conversation with Max Weber, which is a dominant figure now in political theory, that any force or any form of using violence by non-state actor is illegitimate or illegal. So state monopolize the use of force, the use of violence, and any other actor use force is being criminalized. For Ibn Khaldun, it's not about who use of violence. Actually, violence is a means to the political ends. So whoever controls the state or whoever control power, their violence is legitimate. And almost the only one that at least what I know, that resonate with Ibn Khaldun was Walter Benjamin. Walter Benjamin, in his responding to Max Weber in 1921, differentiate between the use of force by the state and non-state. For him, Max Weber, he come up with these two terms, what he called law-making violence and law-preserving violence, or the violence is that makes the law and the violence is that preserves the law. And in my interpretation for what Ibn Khaldun used, that was the closest meaning of what he referring to al-qahr wal-ghalaba as a constitutive component of state violence. In some, this is like the three component of Ibn Khaldun. The main foe of the authority is the disintegration of the Asabiyya. So if the Asabiyya or the dominant group or the national spirit of the state disintegrated, the state will dismiss, or the state will be in decline or under severe challenge or ontological challenge. And for Ibn Khaldun, that's the main important function for the state, is to keep the Asabiyya together, because the Asabiyya is the social glue that keeps the state together and enforce their ideology and their religious colored call, because it's the discursive that unite the people over one idea or one myth, if you like it. And we will see how this was manifested in the Zionism groups, or what I call it today, the Zionist Asabiyya. So this is part of my paper that is forthcoming with International Political Sociology next volume, about to summarize what exactly Ibn Khaldun theory of state building. So you have the authority, the discourse, and the practices, and violence is very central to legitimize state practices, which is actually can be labeled as terror or as legitimate. It depends where you stand. Are you critical? Are you pro state monopoly of violence, or a state can actually be persecuted and be questioned or hold account because of their illegal practices and committing genocide and atrocities like what we saw in Palestine and still see. Another one is how exactly the discursive and the material form of violence work as a constitutive component of a state building, also based on Ibn Khaldun. Now, I already behind my schedule, so I will try to talk about the state of Israel today. Uh, and why the state of Israel? First of all, I'm not talking about Israelian. I know you want to differentiate between the Israelian and the Israel. And if you don't like, and for me, I'm not talking about individuals. I'm not talking about religion. I'm not talking about Judaism or Jewish people. I'm talking about the state of Israel as a political structure, as an institution, as people in power. So when I'm talking about violence today, I'm not referring to individual violence. I'm referring to collective violence, institutional violence, and state violence. So why the state of Israel? First of all, to recap what we said about how Ibn Khaldun represent an alternative decolonizing figure to destabilize the Eurocentric and the Euro-modern foundation of the state building. And in this particular case, which is a security studies or terrorism study, Israel represent actually one of the most outrageous cases that has been dismissed, ignored, or deliberately ignored as state terror. And actually, the dominant narrative in mainstream Muslim academia is actually portrayed Israel to be a peaceful state, a democratic nation that's striving to survive in the middle of hostile and fanatical Muslim Arab society since its establishment in the 1942. And that discourse coming from a profound sense of guilt and shame rooted in the historical atrocities of the Holocaust and the genocide committed against the Jewish communities in Europe and Eastern Europe. Not only the official discourse or this feel of shame and guilt, but also this discourse is deeply embedded in the Western scholarship and Western academia about political violence and terrorism studies. And for me, that was like the main challenge here. How can you move beyond the mainstream, the canon studies of terrorism studies toward something different or toward the victim and the predator dichotomy? For me, I am trying to understand why this overwhelming neglection of such violence that's committed by an actor in international community comparing with other actors. Actually many actors had been labeled to be state terror but not Israel. So I'm interested in that and how Ibn Khaldun will help us actually understand this. So how Ibn Khaldun can help us understand Israel? So I'm claiming that based on Ibn Khaldun, that the Israeli system of power established and consolidated their power mainly through two techniques that was explained by Ibn Khaldun. The first way or the first means was through exporting the syllabus of domestic violence and the use of force and repression towards the local indigenous population of Palestine. So the struggle between the Arab Asabiyya and the Zionism, not Jewish, not Israeli, and Israel was not established yet. It's not about Jewish community because Jewish community live in Palestine for centuries. But here we're talking about European, white, Zionist, secular Asabiyya, settler colonialism. Uh, So exporting the surplus of violence and the use of repression against competitors who seeks to challenge the power of the Zionist Asabiyya through al-Ghalabat wal-Shawk. And the other techniques is the systematic politicalization and securitization of religious discourse that was systematically and repetitively employed by the Jewish law and legal norms. And here I am making a similarity between the Sharia in Islamic tradition and the Torah in the Jewish tradition to serve as the discourses that justify power and manufacturing consent uh, to legitimize the subjugation of the other communities inside Palestine, and in this case, is the Palestinian. So I argue that the European Zionism as an Asabiyya represent what Ibn Khaldun called al-Wa'iz al-Dini or the apparatus politicalization of religion to become an apparatus, not al-da'wah is a discourse. This white European nationalistic ideology is an example of Ibn Khaldun Asabiyya that constitute up in common ground such as blood, kinship, common language, ethnic origins, and religious affiliation, and join in alliance with other Asabiyya, as Ibn Khaldun stated. And that's how the reading of Israel will be completely different from the Eurocentric and the 19th century reading of the modern state of Israel. And the empirical studies I did is actually showed that the first generation of the Zionism from the 19th century actually used this language that confirm the Ibn Khaldun argument about the Asabiyya and the Al-Dawah and about the use of repression. So for them, we can go back to the mid-19th century about the Zionist movement and leadership that talking about coming back to Israel. This is the land of the Zionism, Asabiyya, and the Arab Asabiyya actually stole it from the Arabs. And the only way we come back is through the reunited of our here is the Zionism, our national call or religious call, united the national spirit of the Jewish people to reclaim these lands through conquer, through repression, through the use of violence. And we will see later on how this discourse, 19th and 18th century discourse, has manifested in the 20th century. And actually, in this case, or in this paper, I only rely on Israeli scholarship. I'm not using any Arabs. I'm not using any non-Israeli scholarship. This is a content analysis, a discourse analysis of Israeli scholarship about how actually Israeli scholars read Ibn Khaldun, use Ibn Khaldun, and most of the time misinterpreted, deliberately misinterpreted, and mis-explaining Ibn Khaldun to serve a contradictory actually views and contradictory political maneuvers. For example, I'm talking today about briefly as well. I'm really sorry, like uh, because of the time, but I will give you like an snapshot about the three main scholar I'm talking with. So the first one is Halili Frisch. If I pronounce his name correct, he's like a political scientist at Bar-Ilan University, and I think also he served in the IDF for 15 years or something. And he talked about the Asabiyya here as the Volkist, as we talking about, the national spirit or the nationalism, the hyper nationalism. And for him, Israeli community need to re-embrace, to recall the Asabiyya as Ibn Khaldun use it as a social glue that reunited the community under one goal or one national goal or one common public goods that to serve the Israeli state. And actually, he used Ibn Khaldun to understand that actually the fall of Israel as a Jewish state, which actually it's the only religious state in the international community today that call itself a religious state. The downfall of the Jewish state will be the disintegration of the Zionism or the Jewishness, Asabiyya in Ibn Khaldunian model. Another one is Marduk Kedar. Marduk Kedar was almost 25 years IDF military intelligence lieutenant, and now he's a professor of Arabic culture at the same university by Ilan University in Israel. And this particular guy actually has a great intervention with Ibn Khaldun. And he used Ibn Khaldun not only to understand the crisis or the existential crisis of Israel, but actually he used Ibn Khaldun to proposed a peace treaty with the Palestinian. But his views is very Orientalist. It's very racist, and also his reading is deeply misreading of Ibn Khaldun, or his interpretation is deeply misguided Ibn Khaldun, because on the one hand we use Ibn Khaldun to categorize or to describe the Islamic world or the Arabic world as medieval tribes, and the only language they understand is violence, and they are savages, and savages only treated with repression, and it should stays outside the big city or the civilization. That's another concept of Ibn Khaldun. So in other way, in other word, he used Ibn Khaldun to label the Palestinian as a savages in comparison with the democratic, modern, advanced state of Israel. And since 2012, he proposed what he called the Palestinian Emirates project to several prime minister in Israel. And he claimed that the only way to establish peace with the Palestinian is to follow Ibn Khaldun idea about Asabiyya and state building. So for him, he proposed the eight Emirati, sorry, look, exactly, the eight Palestinian Emirati states. So if you look to the left to the map, this is the main, what he calls the main tribes in Palestine, in West Bank and in Gaza, almost Gaza as well. And he proposed that based on Ibn Khaldun, because he's the only or the most permanent one who understands the Arabs more than anyone else. So we need to follow his advice and to create states based on Asabiyya. Now we're talking about we should come back to state city or city state. So eight Palestinian state, and look at the way he proposed it. So every state has its own currency, its own media, its own structure of government, its own treaty, and its own diplomatic affiliation and diplomatic relationship with the world. So we are not talking about one. We're talking about disintegrated unities that will be easy for Israel to conquer and to get rid one of one by one. And he used Ibn Khaldun to sell this peace treaty to the Israeli and to the world. The last one, and I really need to stop here. I put in myself 45, and now it's already 53. This is the main figure I'm engaging with in my research. Bruce Hoffman is a permanent political theorist of terrorism studies, and he's my supervisor when I was doing my PhD. He's my great mentor and a great human being. But his book is very problematic. Like his book is very well established, very well documented book based on a huge archival work in 5 countries: Israel, United States, United Kingdom, European state as well. And he traces the political violence committed by the Israeli groups and Israeli individuals between 1917 until the establishment of the State of Israel. And his main argument that the State of Israel was established over terror. Terror was the main tools that used by groups, Zionist group, based on a religious or an ideological call, which is Zionism and the Torah, against another Asabiyat, which is the Arabs in Palestine. And this view was not condemned in Bruce's work. It actually was glorified, celebrated. And actually, he claimed that that was the only available means for the Jewish community to establish their own state. And this is, again, this Bruce or Professor Hoffman represents the dominant, the canon terrorism studies that I referred before. Remember, like only state actor monopolize the use of violence, and any non-state actor or groups that use violence are terrorists and need to be criminalized and persecuted by either the national courts or the international law. But in this book, suddenly the terror committed by the Zionist Asabiyya and later on was adapted and integrated in the structure of the State of Israel become celebrated and become glorified and even represented to be like anti-colonial an anti-imperial form of violence that trying to emancipate the Israeli or the Jewish community from avoiding another Holocaust, another genocide committed by the European, but actually to use Mahmoud Darwish, the victim becomes a predator. And now the victim of the European Holocaust committed another Holocaust, and this time against the indigenous population of Palestine under the name of establishing and consolidate the state and preserving the security of the Israeli state. Thank you so much, and I'm sorry for extending my time. I'm looking forward for your question as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ahmed. I would actually recommend to let the conclusion slide be
I
on
will
the
leave it.
screen
Yes, yes, yes,
because
absolutely.
that would also help the participants to frame their questions if they have the written text in front of them. I'm fully aware that we have sort of crossed and I mean, it's very difficult to time these seminars
Not
anyway.
really. I
Uh,
really
eh,
practice it for 20 minutes, but anyhow,
so
so
if anyone,
useless.
no, I mean, I'm very incoherent, so like I won't say anything. So if anyone has any questions, they can raise like click on the raise hand emoji or put their questions in Q&A.
Please
Uh,
come up, please. Like, just yes, please. Like, speak.
I think Kanupriya has a question. Kanupriya.
Yes. Hi, Ahmed. I think the presentation was really fantastic. And, you could have gone on and we would have listened, but we just had time constraints. But I had a question. So,
Please.
I was wanting to ask, how does the excessive use of physical and sort of symbolic state violence impact the long-term nation-building project in Israel? Um, does this align with Ibn Khaldun's prediction about decline of the Asabiyya, where cohesion weakens the social cohesion needed for sustainable power? So how, given the reliance of force over fostering genuine solidarity, do you see this as leading to potential instability and challenges to the state's long-term legitimacy?
Thank you so much, Ali. Should we let's take more than question, please, because I talk too much and now I really will not start talking. Let's give the people a chance, if you don't mind.
I mean, I think while you're answering that question, people will also frame theirs. I don't think we have
There's one in
any.
chat box.
Okay, sorry. I just noticed there's one in chat box. So, Ayala Panieveski, sorry for my pronunciation, asked you that I was wondering what was your definition for terror here. What's the difference between state violence and state terror? Yeah, I also kind of like this question.
Great. Yeah, should I go again? Come
Yeah,
on. I just talked here like 40 minutes. Uh, Thank you so much, Elena, if I didn't forget the name already. Uh, that's actually very a crucial question, actually. Not only conceptually, but also like legally. From even from criminology perspective, right? Since today we talk from the criminology background, uh, state violence is the form of force used or no practiced or exercised by state apparatus, a state institution, for the sake of security, stability, and the safety of the state, or the community, or the society, or the individual, you name it. It's very clear. It's a procedural. It's according the law, and it's very restricted. So, for example, in the state of curfew, for example, right? COVID, no one shall leave their house after 7:30, right? And anyone will be found in the street will be punished according to the article, blah, 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 as you know, right? So this procedure, this measurement is legally binded, legally restricted, and known exactly committed against whom. So it's the rules. It's the common rules within a society for its own safety and its own security. State terror, on the other hand, by definition, like away from state terror, terrorism is the form of violence committed against civilian for a political purposes or for a political cause, either by the state or by non-state. So here, you as a state claim that you have the right to use the violence against what you labeled or what you consider to be the enemy of the state, the enemy of the authority or the system or the regime, or because it's not one concept. In democratic state it's something, in non-democratic state it's something different. And this practices or this form of violence become a political tool for political regimes to get rid of their opposition or their components, right? It's illegal, it's outside the law, it's committed or practices for political purposes. So it's not for the safety of the state, it's not within the procedure or the code, and it's mainly targeted or targeting political opposition or those who challenge the power. It's legitimized by United Nations, by the international law, while the state violence becomes a common ground for the international law. State monopolize the use of force within its legal territories. That's the definition of state violence. While international state terror, it's just every country has its own law to legitimize the use of violence or that kind of violence against who are labeled to be the enemy of the state or terrorist, right? Like for example, it's not only about terrorists like political fanatics, but for example, some countries have laws against environmental terror, right? So state have the right to use terror against people committed this such kind of practices. So in short, state violence is very easy to be recognized and studied, while state terror, it's very perspective. So every country claims that we are in a war in terror. And go back and reflect about what happened since 9/11. Every country, including United States. There is a great book by Richard Jackson called Writing War and Terror. Look how United States manufacture, construct, orchestrate this Patriot Act to get rid of any congressional opposition against war and terror.
Even enemy penology, like
So
for
name it.
criminologists,
Yeah,
the
name
idea of
it.
enemy penology. Yeah.
Honestly, in my first book about counterterrorism discourse, this is what I call it the new world war. Every single country from 9/11 found in war and terror an excuse to get rid of their opposition. Of course, for varied degrees. Some countries like state terror, like China, like Egypt, like North Korea, like Syria, like Russia, right? Other countries like United Kingdom, for example, like look at the new citizenship law 2020. It just gives the home security the right to strip anyone nationality because of the accusation of terrorism. So it's become a political tool in short. To Carolina question, that's actually very deep answer. Like for Ibn Khaldun, a long-term repercussion of the Asabiyya and violence. One of the things, for example, that I dropped from Ibn Khaldun theory or Ibn Khaldun work is that what he calls the state age or the state life circle. For him, state life strings between 120 to 130 years old. This is the three generation or fourth generation of the Asabiyya. So it's become very violent and it's become to be tamed and become to be civilized and become to dismiss, right? Israel now it's almost 70 years. So we're talking about another 40, 50 years. I'm not making any stupid speculation. And I said, yes, maybe. But the good things about Ibn Khaldun is that he really have a very strict indications about what is going on within the Asabiyya. So in certain phases, when the da'wah or the ideology retreat, Asabiyya cannot consolidate their power. Or when they start to lose their material violence or material power, they also start to their decline start. But unfortunately, on the other hand, his theory, it's not one Asabiyya control everything. It's actually a very dialectic theory. So there are many Asabiyya within every country, and it's all about struggle over power between them. Like, for example, like look at the political alliance in Israel. In the last 20 years, you have a certain alliance between certain left parties or ultra right wing like Shas and other Zionist groups. For them, this struggle or this competition, it's actually remove one Asabiyya and bring another one. So it's not about if this Asabiyya fall, the state will integrate or disintegrate. Sorry, disintegrate. This is of his time. This is where a state conquered by other and dismiss the others. So another empire invade another states and remove them from the international order and establish a new regime. This is not our case. This is the problematic I understand, or this is the fuzziness of this is not Westphalian as we know it, right? But not necessary we dismiss this, but actually no, because again, the main point of Ibn Khaldun, Asabiyya, is the fundamental component of the state. So it's not something come from vacuum and will disappear. No, the Asabiyya itself, where the state was established up. So we have the da'wah, which is Zionism. Imagine if Israel, for example, I will ask your question if you allow me in different way. What if there is no Zionism in Israel? Right? This is like a constitutive component of the state of Israel as we know it will not exist. So the whole discourse about the promised land, about the holy land, about the chosen people, right, will dismissed. So you just a normal state. So now we will start talking about peace, we're talking about coexisting, we're talking about politics as usual. But now because we work with ideological myth making, the situation will stay the same, ups and down. But since the Asabiyya did not disappear, the ideology or the da'wah did not disappear, it will be the same, ups and down, but it's always there because, you know, like, go back to the 70s when Menachem Begin come to power, that was another moment for the Zionist Asabiyya. After October 7, the right wing gained control that was not the case in the last 10 years. And the 40s and the 20s and back to the Jabotinsky and the Herzl first generation. So that's why Ibn Khaldun is, that's what I told you like at the beginning, like in my presentation, not you, like I said in my presentation, the social configuration of the state. He was talking about this is the nuclear origins of such states. And it's
Mhm.
not Orientalist, it's not a culture appropriation of certain people. No, it's for him certain countries because that's the disruptions. Europe and other state disrupted. Like there is a break between the medieval Europe and the modern Europe, right? The separation between the state and the church and the modern system of power and capitalism and democracy now. See, there is no medieval Europe as we know it in the 1400, but in other world of the world, it's not the same. It's not the same. That's why I went back to see what Ibn Khaldun have to say about that, or can we use such things he said to understand a state of Israel.
Mm. Thank you, Emma. Your answers were equally indulgent as the talk. And thank you for such elaborate. I know these questions are very difficult to answer because it requires the whole narrating the whole legacy and history of these discussions. But thank you so much. I think one key takeaway I'm taking from this, out of many from this talk, is the need for criminologists to read political theory is
Yes, please.
and
And everyone.
and political theory which is not just liberal political thought but also political theory that has been done in the global south and in the post-colonial and colonial context, and I think that political theory is really relevant in our understanding of crime and punishment, and I think and crime control policy. So that is the takeaway I'm taking, and probably our seminar holders. I'm very much aware of the time, so I'll quickly run through, tell you about our next seminar, which is on 6th December, and that is by Stacey Hind. And the topic of the seminar would be Imperial Gallows, Murder, Violence, and Death Penalty in British Colonial Africa from 1920 to 1960s. Also, if you want to be added to our mailing list, where you'll get all our resources, information about our upcoming events, and how you can contribute or engage with the Decolonizing Criminology Network, Kanupriya has posted it in the chat box also. It is You can email us on our DCN email ID, which Kanupriya has posted in the chat. Thank you everyone for joining us today, and thank you Ahmed again.
Thank
And
you so much.
I mean, I'm assuming you're in Cambridge, so we should also hang out in person.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely. Thank you so
and
much, Ahmed.
yeah, and continue these discussions. Thank you everyone.
Thank you
Thank you
so
so
much, everyone, for showing up today.
Thank you, Ahmed, and good luck for your travel tomorrow.
Thank you so much, dear.
And yes, we should definitely catch up and do like
Definitely.
an in-person meeting
Yes,
with you, or maybe you can join our reading group discussions in person. We would love
absolutely.
to have your thoughts and
I'll be
contributions.
more than honored to do that. Absolutely. And I will. I will for sure.
I will add you to our emailing
Yes,
list.
please. Yes, please. Thank you so much,
much.
Kate.
Okay, wait.
Thank you. Thank you, Karan. All right. Bye.
Bye bye.